it was like 40,000 people that really loved us and was like, you guys are just the perfect people. We're so jealous. And those same people that have been DMing us for like 5 years then were posting our address publicly, saying they were going to come visit us. People kind of trying to destroy our business. And I was like, you guys are cray.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. It is a very, very gay male, no females special. So I'm joined today by Mr. Menno of the YouTube channel. So you should all know who Mr. Menno is. But if not, don't worry. And also Alex and Mick, otherwise known as Nice Boys in the Country on Instagram. So you guys are not really on the YouTube scene, right? So why don't you let people know who you are, what you do, and why we're talking today?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are, our main thing is that we breed like therapy and assistance dogs is our main kind of thing. But on Instagram, we started, it was primarily a gardening and lifestyle Instagram account about 5 years ago, which was doing quite well. And then I accidentally let slip that I thought that some of the trans stuff was getting a little out of hand. And it just...
they eviscerated him online. It wasn't anything close to like a extreme view at all.
No. And it just went wild and we just had so much hate. And then I kind of dropped my head below the parapet for a few months, kind of recovered and then was like, you know what, I'm not going to back down. And then, yeah, it got worse from there.
Well, yeah, I mean, good job. Both of us know, right, Mr. Menno, how tough it can be sometimes, especially at first. But it's quite interesting how, you went from having an otherwise normal account to that, because I would say, I don't know about you, Mr. Menno, you might be able to tell me, but
you can call me Menno.
Menno, sorry.
That was just a handle for Instagram.
I'm just so used to
Mr. Menno.
Menno. Once you're kind of up and running and people know what your content is, then, people are in that algorithm. So I would say 90% of my comments are people who support what I have to say, or they might disagree with some little points. And then you get the odd angry trans activist in there. But generally, I would say the trans activists would avoid watching my content. So did you lose loads of followers and then start to build a new community, or what happened?
Oddly, it was in that first one when we lost all the followers. And then the second time around, it's just we've gained way more than we lost the first time.
Yeah. Accidentally, we built a solidly woke following fully accidentally, and I didn't really know what it was, and found out quite quick. We had about 25,000 very, very angry gay men that were out for our blood. It was wild. And then very quick, we're now at a higher follower count than we were, so they all got replaced, but it's almost a whole new audience now.
Hello everyone, I hope you are enjoying this video with Mr. Menno and Mick and Alex, the nice boys from the country. If you are, please take a moment now to like the video and subscribe so you can help my videos reach as many people as possible. And with that said, let's get back into it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Well, I'd kind of like to hear a bit more about what made you peak, but Menno, you've been on the scene for ages now, so it's probably quite a while since you peaked, but was there anything specific that happened in your life that made you start questioning things?
There were quite a number of things. For me, I'd say it was a bit of a slow journey. I'm not really an opinionated person generally. I'm typically someone
really.
Yeah, no, honestly.
Who are we?
I sit on the fence. I want everyone to get along. I want everyone to be friends. I don't like conflict. I really avoid it. But I just noticed that this was just so utterly fucked up. It was just so wrong. But still, I took like a year to do research into this because I really wanted to know what I was talking about. And during that year, I just peaked and peaked and peaked and peaked, because you think you've peaked and you haven't. Like, you think you're at the top of this mountain, but there's just clouds obscuring the rest of the mountain. And then you go a bit further and a bit further and there's more. But the one thing that really, that I had such a visceral reaction to was when I was given a leaflet for a weekend workshop for gay men. And this was in a sort of a therapy setting where it was about gay men, getting in touch with their inner child. Now, some people think that that's all just a pile of wank. I think it's really interesting. And it was just a small group. So somebody gave me the leaflet and I looked at the front and I'm like, oh, wow, that's right up my street. Then I turned it over and I read something that made me go, But I wasn't really thinking about that. But the person who gave me the leaflet went, what made you go, And then I read it again, and it was the line that said, this weekend workshop is open to anyone who identifies as a gay man. And that phrase, I thought, here you have something that's very specific to gay men, where gay men can get to grips with the issues that only gay men, can experience as gay men. And now you're saying that's open to anyone who can just step into that. And it felt like, and this might sound a bit dramatic, it just felt like such an utter violation that, and again, I'm not really a person who normally expresses anger, but I just started ranting, screaming, crying, and it took about 6 months for that to calm down. So this was
the rest is history.
And then I thought I have to say something. So
here you are 100 music videos later.
Well, basically, again, I never set out to, let's create a channel. That was never the purpose. I just thought I have to do something. What do I know?
Yeah.
Is taking the piss, basically, and singing badly to songs.
Well, I think also you can't really help what does well and what performs well. And it just so happens that for us, at least, it's all the trans stuff is what does well. And we still post gardening stuff. We post videos with our dogs. That gets no engagement, which is fine. We're not
not even the dogs.
No, honestly, we'll post. More than half our content is dogs, gardening, flowers, other stuff. But
and it's I wouldn't say we're necessarily fussed that doesn't take off. But the fact that the trans stuff does take off is what then gets us a reputation as the transphobic guy.
Right. Yeah.
I'd much rather be the gardening guys.
And then for you guys, you're a couple, obviously. So were you once woke? I mean, did one of you start questioning things and then start pissing the other one off? I mean,
I don't think either of us were very woke. I think I was a lot more socially conscious, but certainly not woke.
No.
Yeah.
And
I only in the sense of I was very much you can have that opinion, but you're not really allowed to say it.
I genuinely, no one will believe it. I genuinely had no idea that I was making a faux pas. I had it completely blindsided me. I didn't realize what I was saying.
Can you remember what it is you said?
Yeah, so I said, I'm just becoming a bit conscious that the LGBT community is turning a bit cult-like and some of the gender stuff is going a little bit too far, but no one feels comfortable saying anything. It was that was it.
I think
what was it that had made you kind of think that?
So I think I'm just not comfortable with any situation where someone isn't allowed to express whether it's a right or wrong opinion. I just think in every environment in life, people should be allowed to speak their mind and their truth, and people, they don't even need to listen, but not then come back with pure venom and hatred. And I think that was the bit for me I hadn't really got upset until I posted that. I was just being it just feels a little culty, guys. Let's just be a little bit cautious of this, and boom.
I think what made it worse was he made the mistake of doing the whole, if I explain more and better, they'll understand. And it just, you know what they're like. The more you explain yourself, the worse they get.
The more it proved that it was a cult, right?
Yeah, that was my thing. And the phrase that upset everybody was the gender stuff is getting a little bit out of hand. That was the phrase that kind of, and I actually am embarrassed to admit the first video that we posted, I actually deleted because it got so bad that I was just I'm just going to have to, because it was really getting caught out having, it was 40,000 people that really loved us and was you guys are just the perfect people. We're so jealous. And those same people that have been DMing us for 5 years then were posting our address publicly, saying they were going to come visit us. People kind of trying to destroy our business. And I was like, you guys are crap.
Hey everyone, if you want to support my channel, there are a few ways you can do that. There is a one-time donation via PayPal link in the description. You can also join the YouTube membership community for access to the Jack Jewell Uncut episodes of my podcast, or even better, join the Jack Jewell Uncut Substack for all of the above, plus exclusive articles seen nowhere else. Link is on screen and in the description.
Yeah, that must be hard, because I'm grateful at least I came on the scene already with the viewpoint, because I didn't have some other sort of reputation to dismantle. But when it comes to trans issues, I mean, were you once on the fence? I mean, what was it? Was it learning about what was happening with kids or women's sports?
I'd say I was much more on the fence of like, oh, do you know what? Let people do what they want to do. But it's very much the forcing everyone to change with them. So like, you know, the women that are transitioning into men, having babies and saying men can get pregnant, and then getting upset that they've used the term woman on an NHS letter. Things like that. And I was like, that is just ridiculous.
My issue was, without wanting to single any minority out, was in particular the they, them, non-binaries. That my brain just, it can't hack it as someone that is, awful phrase, gender non-conforming in some senses. Like, I've got longer hair, I've got a woman's ear, I'm not like super butch. And I'm like, you don't need to,
which they're very quick to point out.
Yeah, you don't need to change your whole identity just because you're not like a builder or a painter. Like, it's okay to be a little bit flexy.
I mean, I've seen non-binary men that look like you, but they just maybe wear a tank top or a crop top, and then there you go.
And I think that the reason we were so triggering was because I'm autistic. I've spoken a lot about mental health. I look a bit like them. And I think they really thought that I was their tribe. And I think I just blew their brains apart when they were like, you're not, then it was that real kind of, you're not allowed to do this. And it was like, you've tricked us into thinking you're not an evil scumbag. And I was like, it's wild.
It kind of goes to show, I mean, with gay people, I feel like some people sort of like you as an accessory until you start, you know, just not doing what you're told.
We were called a lot on stories. People were posting us being like, our favorite cute country gays are actually Nazi homophobic. So we were kind of the cute country gays with the like cute tweed jacket. Like, I don't know, they'd kind of like had put us in a little box.
Yeah.
As long as you don't rock the boat, you're the cute country gays.
Oh yeah.
And it reminds me of,
no, you go.
It reminds me of some friends that I had or used to have, you know, who'd gone down the whole medical path, and I was friendly with them, but those friendships disappeared as long as I said the wrong thing, or as long as as soon as I asked the wrong question. And
which changes, by the way, the right thing to say changes almost day to day.
Right, but also I thought they were the more reasonable, grounded ones, and like I stayed with one of them just after that first lockdown was lifted, and he lives on the coast, so we're walking along the beach. It was a gorgeous day with the dog, and he kind of talks like this to take the bass out of the voice. And it doesn't sound like a woman. It just sounds like an odd man's voice. But anyway, then the dog went way too far. The dog's name is Toby. So he's talking to me. Oh, what a lovely day. Toby, come back. And then we'd look at each other and we'd laugh, right? And that made me think he's a bit more grounded about this. But then as soon as I posted something similar actually to you, sorry, I don't know if you're Alex or Mick.
I'm Alex. Mick.
Alex. So when you said in your post, you know, some things have gotten a bit out of hand. All I said in a post was, there's a new type of homophobia, and it's coming from within our own community. That was all I said. Yep. Bam! He was on it with a comment, and on my WhatsApp privately, I didn't know you were so fully 100% anti-trans. I'd never even heard the word anti-trans before. And it's like, what the fuck? Anyways.
What year was that?
That was lockdown year, so that was 2020. And
right.
So this, I hadn't made any videos yet, but I had an Instagram account which was anonymous, where I started posting about this stuff and interacting with others who were posting about this stuff. So I was at his place, and we're having like lunch, and then I went up to the guest room, and I would tweet something turfy, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is so naughty," but I hadn't worked it out yet. In those days, I subscribed to the idea of true trans. You know, some people were true transsexuals and all that kind of crap. I don't anymore.
No.
And I thought he was one of those, but no.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I mean, you talked about losing friends, of course, but so Alex and Mick, what was that like for you guys? Did I'm guessing you had the advantage of being, financially free in terms of your own employment and everything. Maybe I'm wrong, but have you faced?
No, I think that's part. I think that was one of our appeals before, was that we're not full-time employed. We're not like in the corporate world, as it were. We've kind of set up our own thing outside on the fringes of society, and people loved that before, but now it's, what is it, Daddy's Trust Fund.
Yeah, so I think luckily I do think a lot of the kind of woke madness doesn't exist so strongly outside of cities. So because we're relatively rural, 9.5 out of 10 people that you meet would share our exact views. So that was what was so shocking to me, is that it is slightly different in the country, because like I remember the first transsexual I met years ago, like, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago. It was introduced beforehand. Oh, I know it's a bit weird that he's in a dress, but it's okay. We just go along with it. We call him Barbara. I know it's weird, but let's all just pretend.
Okay, it's always Barbara, isn't it? Whether it's a sheep or a bloke in a dress.
Yeah, and that was all it was. It wasn't like a big...
No, you mustn't say anything to upset them. You've got that is a woman.
There wasn't any of that. And I think the thing that really tipped me over the edge, I naturally don't like being controlled and being told what I can and can't do. And for me, my biggest thing is I find it really dangerous when you're forcing conversations underground. And it was that level of control and that kind of militant iron fist of keeping people down. Whenever that happens, I'm like, something fishy is going on.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that if you're not doing something bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I see a lot of your content as sort of holding up a mirror to these people and trying to show the hypocrisy, but a lot of
they don't see it.
This is the bit that I struggle with. I spent a good 9 months thinking that I could change people's mind. And I was like, any day now, someone's going to watch a reel or watch a story and be like, they're right. Of course they're right.
not even change their minds in terms of change their viewpoints, but just be like, I'm not a hateful person. I'm just saying my opinion, and that should be okay.
Because it's the box you get put into of you're now a hateful. So I think people are shocked that we've got dogs and that we've got a nice garden, because they're like, that's not what hateful people do. Like, you should kill every dog.
Use your dogs. So they're shocked.
Yeah, they're like, and so I find the only way they can deal with it is to create another box to put us in of, oh, you two hate each other and you must be so miserable, and how sad must your childhood, like, there's just anything they'll do.
Yeah. And obviously you said you got cancelled by a lot of gays, but and by the way, in terms of changing people's minds, you'd be surprised, because some people who are changing their minds and thinking through things maybe aren't very vocal on the comments and stuff like that.
But also, that was going to say, that was frustrating, is particularly when we did our reel in the December, we had the comments were pretty 50-50, but our DMs were just genuinely hundreds of thousands of people being like, I'm a gay man and I agree, but I'm too afraid to say something.
But I think validly.
Oh yeah,
and
I don't blame
that
them.
was the bit that really got me. Initially was like, these people are cowards, and then I called a few people out and they explained. They were like, the creative industry that I'm in, if I was even seen to follow your account, I would be sacked.
Yeah.
And that, because I've always been self-employed, that's not something I can understand. I'm like, do they have that power? I'm like, really? It doesn't make sense.
I know people in the exact same situation, and I don't, I have some close friends in that situation, and honestly, I don't judge them for it, because some of us take a really big risk, and so that's just the way it is. But, you know, Menno, I'm assuming it's been the same with you in terms of having the silent gays reach out. I mean, a question for all of you, but Menno, you can go first. If you had to guess, what percentage of gay men would sort of be on board with us?
It's kind of tricky because the ones who are against us, if you like, are so vocal. So it makes it seem like they have the upper hand. What I've noticed, though, is like some friends of mine, they have now started messaging me privately that initially were pushing back against me, and they're like, "Oh, I get it," but again, it's sort of on the quiet.
I'm waiting for that day.
No, but it's via Facebook Messenger or via direct message on Twitter, and it's interesting because they're not necessarily saying, "Oh, you're right," because that's another step, but they're going, "Oh, well, something's not quite right here," right? But there was one friend, and I miss him as a friend. I really do. And that was a friendship of over 15 years where we'd worked together. We, celebrate New Year's Eve together and other things. And we were going to meet up in a pub and have a chat about it. And that never happened. But he works in the arts, in the performing arts. And now when I see him doing a play somewhere, all the cast members have their pronouns next to their name. There's all these non-binaries, this and that. So he's so swept away with all that. And I always looked up to him as almost like an older brother. Like, I don't have any brothers, so I sort of looked at him as the older, not that much older, slightly older gay man that I could learn from and look up to. And that just disappeared overnight. And we've never had a chance to talk face to face about it. So that one really upsets me.
Yeah, I've been through and I'm going through similar things, so it's really difficult. But how about you guys? What percent, if you had to put?
What do you guess? I know what I guess.
I'd say of the people we speak to, 90% of them tend to agree with us.
Broader.
What about in the UK?
Broadly, yeah, in the UK.
Oh yeah, sorry, people. I haven't met a single gay person that. I mean, I don't go out that much, but
I'd guess 80% would be my guess, and I reckon half of them are silently agreeing and half of them are loudly agreeing. But I would say that in the last year alone, I think the percentage has doubled. I think the tide is turning real fast, in my opinion. But I could be deluded.
I think what's really telling is the people that are against it are always the same. It's a certain type of person. You can almost pick them out in a crowd by the words they use or the way they look.
Yeah, and normally I find like these people are actually tolerant people who are just able to accept differences of opinion rather than, it's all hypocrisy, and it's very clever the way they and the kind of progressive left use weaponized language to accuse us of words that are quite intimidating and quite scary. No one wants to be called a racist and then think about people kind of whispering, saying, "Have you heard that he's become really racist or whatever, becoming a transphobe?" So it's super intimidating the way they do that. But then obviously what's really going on is they are the intolerant ones who, are willing to cast you aside if you have a differing of opinion. And it really, I mean, I'm sure your experience matches this, but just how Orwellian this time we are in. It's like if you disagree with the government, then someone goes off and tells the government that you're against them, and then you're executed. So I mean, obviously that's an exaggeration, but it is it has taught me a lot about the power of social conformity and how desperate people are not to sacrifice that. So I really hope that we can there's a lot more conversation now about freedom of speech in the UK, so I feel like we can overcome it.
I think what I've noticed, and one of the things I really try and do a lot on our Instagram, is that what changes people's minds, I've noticed a lot, is seeing the horrendous stuff that we get sent in terms of abuse. Because lots of people will be like, "Oh, I don't think I mind some of the trans stuff." And it's only when they see that someone speaking out gets the abuse that we get that they're like, that's what I've noticed. That's what kind of changes a lot of people's minds, is being like, "Oh no, these people, they're not sane, they're not normal, they're not the people that I'd actually want to associate with."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've never wished someone death, wished someone rape, called someone.
I wouldn't even think about it.
wish someone
That's not
would
very
die
progressive,
alone.
Jack.
No, it's not.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
But I'm sure you've got those accusations.
Oh,
Menno.
yeah.
And we've had some horribly pictorial ones where someone sent a long message describing how they wanted me and Mick to both die of AIDS, and they wanted us to be looking in each other's eyes as the other one died, so we'd know the true feeling of like pain and suffering. And I was like, the one that I find that annoys me the most is I think, is it called doxing?
Yeah.
We get it. It's just constant. So people just constantly sharing our address with like some sort of vague underhand threat. And we had someone the other day that was like, oh, if I ever see you, I'm going to kill you.
Come to Bristol and we'll all attack you.
And I was like, who gives
What
a death threat?
is that?
And then goes, but you've got to come to me. So I'll be honest, maybe one day I keep saying we're going to get caught out and we may actually end up 6 foot under, but we get hundreds of them. I don't take any of them seriously.
Have you been swatted?
What's that?
That's when someone reports your address to the police and says that there's like a homicide going on, and then the police show up and
don't give them ideas, Jack.
Sorry, I might put that out.
No,
but what you're describing, what you're describing is, to anyone else, they'd recognize that as typical male aggression, and it hopefully helps people understand that actually all the aggression and visceral reactions, for the most part, yes, they come from kind of confused non-binary people, but I think a lot of this really aggressive nature is coming from straight men who claim to be women. Would you agree, Menno?
Well, I guess. And like I had the one person who wished me dead is a straight bloke who thinks he's a woman and does silly dances in the ladies' toilet. He saw a picture of me in a car, and then he reposted it saying, "Where are the Paris tunnels when you need them?" And this was just on the anniversary of Diana's death, stuff like that. But I've never. I don't even think, as much as I disagree with these people and take the piss out of like stupid behavior, I've never gone down that road.
And this is the point that I make a lot: is we share a lot of content, and I can guarantee you that no one that's seen what we share, as in of like when we share a trans person's reel, I can guarantee none of our followers have ever even got close to wishing someone harm. I don't think it's ever popped up. Whereas every time we're shared on a trans account, we get 10 to 20. They're not always death threats. They're very cleverly worded.
It's always the classic story of us tagged, send these people hate.
Yeah, we get it all the time. It's like, go abuse these people. Let's destroy these people. And I'm like, it just gets... The first time it happened, I was terrified. I was genuinely terrified. And now I'm just like, oh, another nutter? It loses its effect.
It only takes one nutter to do something very nutty, and dangerous. At least you've got dogs.
So we've got really good CCTV. We've got several dogs that would easily... If someone could get past the dogs, there's no way they'd get to us without us knowing about it.
Because dog theft is such a big thing anyway. We were already like Fort Knox because we have high value dogs, so we didn't have to make any changes necessarily. But it's already, if you tried to get in, you just wouldn't. So that makes us feel quite safe, is that someone would be mauled before they got to us.
I also think most of these people, because we are remote and they're usually in cities, they just don't. They're never going to do anything.
They're going to
they probably wouldn't have enough energy to get out there.
No, there's no public transport.
They might not be able to afford the train.
Yeah, or they rock up on a flipping mobility scooter, like.
Well, one more question for all of you before we get into something a little bit more fun. But you mentioned being scared. So I'm just curious, with all this hate and backlash, how do you manage your mental health? Because I think a lot of people might assume, watching my content or your content, Menno, or whatever, that I just don't give a shit, what anyone thinks, and I'm confident in my opinion. And while a lot of that is true, there have definitely been dark times, like especially in personal life situations. And I think everyone struggles with these things in some regard. So how do you deal with the hate? Does it make you anxious, or are you guys over it? Alex and Mick, why don't you go first?
We're so different on that.
Yeah,
you go first.
I just say it doesn't even remotely get to me. 90% of these people, I would say, aren't necessarily real people. They're playing a caricature. It's never really their opinion. It's just the popular opinion they're spouting. And I can guarantee you, if I met them in the street, they'd just be normal.
Whereas I'm
still very aware of the whole keyboard warrior thing. I mean, cyberbullying back in the day when the advice was just ignore it.
And it's kind of what we're like as people. Mick is categorically much tougher, more self-assured and more confident than I am. And I think it really, really affected me. It's tricky. I don't want to be honest, because I know that the people that did it, their end goal was to really hurt me. So I've never really been super honest about how hurt I was, because those sorts of people, they revel in other people's suffering. But I think it's still worthwhile being honest. But it's really tough, because I found that the people that send the hate are some of the most manipulative people, and they really find that weak spot. They find that little chink in your armor and they just go. And I think it's just hard, because you can project that onto real life, and I have to be really careful that when we go out shopping or something, that I'm not thinking that there's hundreds of people because luckily where we are, no one would have a clue that we did an Instagram video. No one would know. But it's really isolating, and it's not natural for people, how we've evolved, to feel like their tribe's against them. And that is what it feels like.
I kind of feel like what's important to know, and it is very, very complicated, is that these people aren't necessarily pro-trans. They're kind of pro-chaos, and they tend to jump on any cause that seems to upset people. So you've got the Palestine people, you've got the Just Stop Oil people, and it's always a certain type of person in a different community, and it's like they co-opt different minorities to have an excuse to be angry. So I've always said to you, it's just a lot of people just want an excuse to be angry and shout at people and feel justified.
That's Mick's favourite point. He's don't forget, they're just happy that they found something that they can be really vile about.
Yeah,
and I've heard that there is a personality type that, depending on the time in history, they could just as easily fall into a far right ideology like Nazism. I know that sounds extreme, or communism. It just depends on what the social incentives are, and their obviously inclination to be desperate to be part of a tribe. But Menno, how do you deal with the hate? And then we'll move on.
The hate just makes me laugh most of the time, because they come out with such ridiculous stuff like that I'm trans and I'm a bitter trans woman who never got the referral to the gender clinic, and I have egg energy, or people saying I'm a detransitioner. They don't know which way it's going, and it's just I'm at a point they really like to say that I'm old and that I'm ugly and that I need a better moisturizer. And it's and I think that's because maybe they think that gay men are so obsessed with youth that, saying that you're old is the worst thing you can say. Whereas I'm 50 next year. I'm happy, whatever. I've never been at a better place in my life in terms of, just being confident and happy with where I'm at. Yeah. But what gets me in terms of when you talk about mental health is just seeing the awfulness of what people are having to deal with, the people who are being sacked, the people who are being hounded and harassed, the detransitioners and all their stories. So it's more the reading and the listening to the real stuff that people are suffering with that I find hard to deal with. And also just the onslaught of information. Like this morning, I thought, I just finished the video and I thought, oh, what's happening in the world? Let's go on Twitter. And it's one thing after another. And it's how do you keep up with all that stuff? I have a brain that says, I want to know everything. I need to know all the details about this and about that. And it's stop. So that I find hard.
There's literally a trans story every day, coming out.
Easily.
But in so much detail, that whole Imam Khalif thing, that he was going to be boxing in the Netherlands. I was supposed to jump on a flight today at 11, but then I didn't because he's not there. So what's the point?
So you mentioned being called a trans woman and a detransitioner. Now, for my audience, I think this would be good, because I recently had a conversation with Buck Angel, which some of you guys may have seen, and I did ask Buck about Mr. Menno, but I could have possibly pushed back a little bit on some of the rhetoric that's been said. So do you want to tell my audience, Menno, kind of what's been said about you and what you disagree with?
Right. Well, Buck is a woman who I believe has been quite instrumental in paving the way for all this madness that we're dealing with today. Particularly the idea that men can have vaginas, and particularly the idea that women can be gay men. Right? She made her name and her fortune in gay porn of all places. And recently she sort of started to say, oh, I'm one of the reasonable ones. And I'm not, I used to buy into that initially when I came across her. I was like, oh, thank heavens for Buck Angel, right? But once she posted something about, I am female, I acknowledge I'm female, because that's her thing. But I've made such an effort to appear as a man that I would really see it as a sign of respect if you call me he, him. And I made a very short little video, it's 3 minutes or something, where I basically explained I only use he, him for men and she, her for women. Simple. And I explained why I do that. And Buck just happened to be the example because she had posted, I would see it as a sign of respect, which to me is a very passive-aggressive way of saying, you must respect me. Because if you don't do it, then it's a sign of disrespect. Anyway, and I just went in a very calm, mild, meek sort of way. No, I won't. And I think it took her about 6 months to find it. She'd already blocked me on various platforms. Whereas when I was anonymous on Instagram, we messaged privately and she was like, hi, friend. Oh my God, I appreciate you so much. That kind of stuff. Anyways, so then she went on Twitter, unblocked me so she could tag me or whatever. And then went, cross-dressing Mr. Menno. And I'm like, cross-dressing is your life. How can you use that as something against me? Cross-dressing Mr. Menno had a failed sex change and is just bitter because, her sex change never worked out, and don't come for me or I'll come for you, lady. And it's like, look, misgendering is really not going to upset me. And this is the thing that I've had to deal with all my life, right? As a child, as a teenager, always, because kids, they start bullying others as soon as they can, because, that's just human nature. They would almost call me a girl or girly, or, oh, you should have been born a girl. You should have been a woman. You want to be a woman. I have a lifetime of experience with that stuff. And then for Buck to basically turn into that bully, it's like, well, it was just ridiculous. But then she kept saying that I was a detransitioner, like over the course of a couple of months. Then some other gay guy who's supposedly the voice of reason jumped on that as well. And they just keep going on about how I should get kicked in my lady balls by the turfs. And I'm just like, really, Queen? Is that the best you got?
I was going to say, I think this is the biggest thing for me, at least, of how it's so easy to deal with. They use the same lines, all of them. They always use all the same lines, and they get boring.
And actually, like,
nothing.
So to you, Jack, one of the things that Buck said when you brought me up was, we're not going to stop existing. It's like, well, it's the same. You want to erase our existence card, right? That's the same card, and she always goes on about how transitioning changed her life. It's like, it's the suicide card again, but in a slightly different way. And everything, she's talking out of both sides of her mouth constantly. And I do think you sort of fall for that a little bit.
I was going to say to you, I think it's really tricky because, there's quite a lot you said I can agree with. So I think in terms of the accusations that have been leveled at you, baseless. I vehemently disagree with that, and I'd be very happy to tell Buck that. But when I speak to Buck, I have no problem pushing back and saying there are things we disagree on. But then all of us deal with things differently, right? And in terms of on a personal level, just as humans, Buck has been extraordinarily kind to me and sort of like an online friend. And I know that there are lots of gender critical, for want of a better term, people who will say, oh, you're just falling for it because Buck has a big platform, whatever. And that's totally fine if you think that. but I'm definitely on your side when it comes to being treated that way. And I do think that was an overreaction. But, you know, I think it's also good to have, you know, to have these conversations. And, you know, I'm always assessing how I feel about these things, and I've changed my mind loads, and I'll continue to change it. So that's just where I'm at. Guys, where can people go find more of you? Start with Alex and Mick.
We're just on Instagram. What's our tag?
Nice boys,
in the country.
Not because we think
you should enter the YouTube world.
I think you guys should have a TV show.
It's the time around editing and filming and sitting down, and
the dogs take up a lot of time, I guarantee you.
And Menno?
I'm on YouTube, Mr. Menno, MrMenno, and on Twitter, Mr. Menno Tweets. Those are my main places. Facebook is picking up for me.
How 1990s.
I never thought
2010.
Right, but it's Mr. Menno, and TikTok, which I hardly ever use because almost every video I put up on there just gets community violation, this or that, blah blah. It's just there's no point for me. Yeah, and you can find me in Sainsbury's. I was there yesterday.
Don't tell them which one.
This woman came up. I was just looking at the chicken, and then she walked past me and she kind of goes, and then she walked back and she's like, do I know you from Twitter? I said, well, if it's turfy stuff, then absolutely. And then she went, can I just shake your hand? So
I almost don't want to say it, but you'll see us in Waitrose.
Of course, rich boys. Guys, thank you so much. It's been an absolute blast. And we'll see you soon.